Welcome to The Writer's Dream. This is a show where authors are able to talk about how they write their books, how they publish their books, and how they market their books. You can find us here on LTV. Just look at, queue up the videos. You can also find us on YouTube. This is The Writer's Dream. But what you need to search is my name, Linda Maria Frank, and just click on my pictures and you will get many, many interviews of local authors. You can also find us on Facebook if you want to be on the show. Message me through Facebook. And we are on Cablevision Channel 20 at 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon. So without further ado, our guest today is Dr. Dawn Filos, and she is a veterinarian, and she has also written a book, a beautiful book, Tales of a Pet Vet. So, Dr. Filos, how are you today?
I'm great. I'm so happy to be here.
Good. Okay, so let's get started on your little journey here on how you got to write this book. Books is wonderful anyway. All right, so you obviously love animals. Why?
Well, I sure hope veterinarians love animals. I think, and I talk about this in the book, I was raised with just animal lover fanatics, really. We always had animals. We had birthday parties for animals. I didn't realize how unusual our family was until I got out in the real world to see that we were a bit unusual, but it was a wonderful environment. We had a pet monkey, as I talk about in the book. We had just a menagerie of pets, and we would do anything for them. And it was just I was a scientist, like I liked science, and I wanted from an early age I decided to be a veterinarian.
So, when you went to veterinary school, I taught science, and I had a lot of students who were interested in going into veterinary medicine. But it was so hard to get into veterinary school, much harder than it is to get into regular medical school. So, how was your experience in vet school?
Well, once I finally got to vet school, it was wonderful. Getting into vet school, it was a bit, so I didn't get in right away, and I talk about that in the book. I was a biochemistry major, undergraduate in New Jersey, in a state where we didn't have a vet school. So there were about 23 schools at the time. There are a few more now. So we, so there were only some what we call contracts with a few other schools. So there were 15 seats at Penn, where I went for New Jersey residents, 7 at Cornell, 4 at Ohio, and 2 at Alabama, Tuskegee. So those spots were really competitive. And so on my third attempt, I finally got in. I did a master's degree in kidney renal physiology while I was waiting at the vet school at the University of Georgia, as a matter of fact. So I have, I just stayed in school and improved my resume, shall you say, and eventually I got in. So it was a little bit longer to get there than I would have liked. But by the time, and because I had that strong science background, some of the classes were repeated, and so a lot of my classmates that had to take some of those biochemistry, they had to they struggled a little more, and so I found it easier actually in my first year. And then I got to do clinics, and finally was where I wanted to be. It was a great experience in vet school.
Did you get out of vet school what you expected to get out of, and not only that, but was the training that you received once you got into practice? Was practice Did it match up with what you learned in vet school?
Well, they call it practice
Yeah.
for a very good reason. And so, what's different with veterinary medicine than human medicine, my husband's a physician, so we call him the human doctor, is you're required to do residencies and internships when you are in medical school. So you have sort of more of a, not hand holding, but you're supervised practice. which the majority of veterinarians do not have. We sort of learn on the job. Some of my classmates have done an extra year internship and or veterinarians, and some do specialty residencies, and then they only do that. Then they have additional boards. But the far majority are like me, and I'm sort of a combination GP, dermatologist, everything, surgery. And so if you're lucky, you have a boss or position that you have a real mentor to help you teach you kind of on the job. That wasn't my experience. I was just thrown out there and learned, and you learn very quickly when you, I had some associates that would help me, but generally I was not always working with another vet. And so I'm a little jealous of those that didn't have that experience, but I figured it out. But it was a little scary. Those were some exciting years, and I talk about that in the book. Just kind of learning on the job. Regardless, that's how we all learn, but some have a little bit more assistance than others.
Well, it sounds like you really had a wonderful experience as far as your education is concerned. So now you're a vet, and let's get into more about what the book talks about. How do you explain people's devotion to pets? Because people are really nutso about their pets. I am nutso about my pets.
And the society, I can't imagine it getting, I think we're cresting a wave of being like their family. And, they were always family to us, and we, but it's next level. As a matter of, and I talk quite a bit about this in the book, and I have a blog that I've had to sort of supplement my teaching, supplement to information for my clients. And I talk a lot about just the extremes that I've seen that people go to. Certainly medical, it's a good thing, but they are treated as children, if not better than some children. And I get it. They don't talk back to us. They don't abandon us and get married, but it's pretty out there. And so sometimes along that comes with that is this heightened emotional, sometimes extreme reaction to when the pets are ill. So we're dealing with where doctors and people are treating them or seeing them as family. But on the other hand, you don't just automatically say, okay, we need to do this, 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 and this. As you have a problem, you go to your doctor and they do what is indicated. With us, we have to get permission, and we're not always given permission to do what we think we need to do to get to the bottom of the problem. So it can be a struggle, and that's not always, but sometimes, financially, clients cannot afford to do what we want to do, and so we're stuck. But I talk a lot about my extreme and kind of funny stories with clients, qualifying. I hope my intent was fully admitting that I've been the unhinged, emotional pet parent in my own life, and I give examples of that, hoping that gives me liberty to share some of these other clients that I've had who've taken it a bit extreme. But I feel like I thought it was important to write that for people to understand my experience, but to also understand I'm like you. I've been there. I get it. I have to manage it professionally, but it's coming from a place where I did the same thing once. I'm unhinged if there's a problem. So you have to be empathetic to your clients' emotional needs as well as be there medically to help their pet.
I think it's because they give you unconditional love. You can have any kind of mood, and they accept you, and they're cute.
Mm-hmm.
I find them I find the whole animal world fascinating because I see the connections between us and them, and also I have kind of a religious belief that God created. If you believe in God, God created everything. So we're supposed to be the top banana. Then shouldn't we be taking care of them all?
Mm-hmm. I agree.
the term animal husbandry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my feeling about it, but that's just me. So, in your book, in your wonderful book, you tell some stories about um, various animal patients that you have. Would you like to relate some of those stories?
Sure. I mean, there's so many stories, and I had to pick and choose. But my favorite story, and it discusses this topic, is this Katzenera, which was early on in the book. I had clients who had a 15-year-old cat, and they decided to have a party for this cat, which to me was just such a bad idea. I mean, if a 15-year-old cats don't like being celebrated with other cats being brought into their home. They did that. They had an elaborate feast, which involved catnip for all of these cats who
Oh
were
God.
brought into the home. And I don't know if you're a cat person, Linda, but it is just such a bad idea from the onset. And so, of course, I was working alone one evening at a clinic, which I often did. Before my house call practice, I worked full time and then I worked relief. So I get this call. People are screaming. We can't quite discern what's going on. All the cats are fighting. I had just come in. I didn't know what to expect. And by the time they came in, they were all sleeping. All these 7 cats were sleeping in their carriers. And so what happens with catnip, some cats are not affected. Others become really
Crazy.
relaxed. And others will get aggressive and then fight and then fall asleep. And that's exactly what happened. So I knew there was a fight between them. I finally got the story, found like 2 small bite wounds, which are very difficult in furred animal. Treated them. No one was seriously hurt, but it was just sort of like, please don't have a cat party for your cat, period, in your own home. It's just not natural. So that was sort of just an example. And these lovely clients, I mean, they adored their cat. They thought it was a great idea. So for those of you listening, it's not a great idea. Dogs maybe, cats definitely not.
So have you got a story about a pet that you didn't think was going to make it but made it?
Oh my goodness, so many, so many. I had one, I guess, well, that one might not. I mean, there's so many patients that I had that probably uh, had, one, for example, I had a dog come in, and I talk about this in the book, I think, as well, that had come into a clinic that I had just started working at that night, and I was just getting to know them. It was sort of a permanent relief part-time situation, and I didn't even know the assistants' names. It was like, hi, I'm Dr. Filos, and true to form, every first shift I would have some horrible thing happen. And I could prove my colors. So in this instance, this dog had been hit by a car, a Siberian Husky, and he was in very bad shape. And I said, let's stabilize him and get him to an ER. And he did ultimately survive, but I was praying it was touch and go. And he had lost so much blood, I wanted to do a particular procedure, which I had learned in vet school. And it was my school, my veterinary school at Penn had probably the busiest and best ER probably in the world because it's in an inner city. And I learned more in that ER for real life that was super helpful to me, one of which was a cut down technique. So if you have really bad vein, like we had to cut to access the vein, and I wanted to put 2 catheters to extra hydrate and give emergency drugs. And no one had ever seen that procedure, so I did it and taught them. Someone did it for me. We stabilized him, and he went out into the ER, was stable enough, and he survived. And so I was just praying, and I did not think he was going to get from A to B. We didn't have sort of the regular veterinary hospitals sometimes don't have oxygen tanks and or blood transfusions. These are things, these emergency clinics that are 24 hours are a lifesaver to vets like me that were general practitioners and working all day. Because when you get an emergency in the middle of the night, you're not your best, you're not fully staffed, and you're done the next day. So I did think this dog needed a transfer, but he miraculously got there in time. It was touch and go for quite a bit, but it was really satisfying. And I think I impressed upon my staff. I ended up working there for over 10 years after that first exciting night. But I think they developed some respect for my skills immediately, which sometimes, takes a bit. When a new vet comes in, they don't know how is this person going to be. So that was sort of trial vet by fire, but it ended well.
So do dogs have blood types like people?
They do, and there are some tests that we figure out you need to match their blood types as well, for
Yeah,
sure.
that's something I never knew. What's the best piece of advice you could give to a pet owner?
Well, I always say that this will be inscribed on my tombstone. Err on the side of caution. If you think there might be something wrong, um, just pick up the phone and call your vet or go to the ER. And I taught a pet first aid class. I think I mentioned it in the book. And my goal for that was, on that note, is to familiarize pet parents with what is normal in their dog so that they can quickly recognize what's abnormal and or what is too much blood loss. Like, let's say you trim their nails, like do this, but so stuff like respiratory breathing rate, hydration, heart rate at rest. I familiarized with them, and I would bring in big dogs, and several students would get around, and here's where you can feel a pulse and different things. So teaching normals, recognizing what's abnormal. If you're not sure, pick up the phone or get in the car and go to the ER. I talk about this in the book as well. The worst veterinary shift is the Monday morning shift because you have all these emergencies come in that should have been seen on Friday evening. The people wait until Monday. And so a small problem becomes a much larger problem. I want to prevent that for myself and my colleagues. And you pick up the phone on Friday. Or you can do telemedicine, which is somewhat new. Sometimes that is helpful because you can get a visual. The doctor can get a visual, and that will say, yes, you need to come in, or no, you don't need to come in. So we have that technology now, and that is an instance where technology can be our friend.
What about people who fall on hard times? And for instance, we're looking at these uh, terrible fires in California, and a lot of the people, of course, got their pets out. But what do they do with their pets? They don't have a home to go back to. But there's various situations where people can no longer take care of their pets. Is there some way that they can be that their pets can be taken care? Is there someplace they can take their pets?
Well, this is actually one of my passions in life at this stage of my career. So, for example, in Los Angeles, there are all sorts of people stepping up because this is an extreme situation. There are shelters that are taking in pets. There are fosters, and a lot of these foster organizations are opening up their doors, to bring these pets in until the families can be rehomed. But in Pennsylvania, where I used to work with a rescue. I've worked with homeless shelters in the past, so this is sort of a version of that. In addition to separate animal organizations, I recently posted about many of them on my social media. There's all sorts of ways that people can help in their organizations to be connected with to help in this situation. But so, for example, here in Arizona, in Phoenix, St. Vincent de Paul, they have their largest family homeless shelter, serves the community in the country, and they have built a veterinary hospital and shelter for the very reason that people who are home endangered or homeless don't want to leave their pets. And so, to me, it is the most brilliant. They built a veterinary hospital with a shelter, and so for that to me is so important because people will stay homeless, which is an ideal, or they have to give up their pets. So in this instance, this is an extreme situation, but there are so many, and I can send you those resources, organizations that you can support directly as a foster, or give money to support their cause and donations. And that is sort of semi-retirement that I'm in now has become very important to me to spread the word about that.
Okay. How many pets is too many?
Really, it's funny because we talk about this. There's two schools of thought. I feel like I would rather be able to give proper care and be able to have the amount of pets that I can afford and be able to give them proper care. And I don't have 20, 30 pets at a time. A lot of people disagree with me, and they think they may not give what I consider what I recommend, full veterinary care or preventative or vaccines, but they're helping more pets. I think somewhere in between. What you can afford in terms of your time, in terms of finances and housing. We all want to have as many pets, but I think they do not always, they sometimes suffer medically if they're in a situation where uh, there's overcrowding in the home, and certainly hoarding situations. That's one extreme. But there are some little people with 10 or 15 pets, but I love them, but I'm not going to vaccinate any of them, and or tick prevention or so forth. And I don't always think that's ideal. That's my opinion. And it's not my place medically to say I think you have too many pets, but I do recommend. I do think quality care is better than too much quantity. But I mean, some people spend their time and money on pets. I've met the most amazing clients who have 20 cats, and they have a schedule of drugs and meds that I'm like, how do you even manage this? How do you go to work? And they're the most wonderful people. And so I've seen people manage 15 to 20 pets lovingly and adequately. So it really does vary with your finances and your time and your housing situation. But there are homes where there
Out
are
of 35 cat people. Yeah.
that's just a bit much. And for me, I mean, I have a client who has 14 cats and 2 dogs. She used to work with him in a 1 bedroom apartment. She has OC cat litter. You walk in, you don't know there's any cats in this home. The cats all get along, which is the hard part. The 2 dogs just stay out of the cat's way. It's clean. They're well taken care of. They're well fed. You can do it. And that is an example of somebody who's doing it right. And
I guess that's the key. I guess that's the key then. As long as you can take care of them, it doesn't matter how many you have.
It doesn't matter. And some people, I mean, and I'm just amazed at the sacrifice. I have always said that veterinary medicine, sometimes it's very discouraging what you see, but for the most part, it's restored my faith in humanity. What people are willing and able to do for animals who are put on this earth. And so of course I'm here with their in my best interest. But I've met people who are amazing, and so had access to like saints. I think on this earth, what people do is wonderful.
Okay, we have a few minutes left. What would you like to tell us?
Well, I hope that people will listen to or read my book, because there's an audio version which is really fun, and the ebook and print. But the intent of this book, what I'd like them to know and to get out of this book, coming along on my journey, which is, it's not all sadness. There's a lot of very funny stories, but I want them to see what it's like to be a veterinarian, to understand that we're pet parents too, and to realize there's this big community of people just like them, if they're pet lovers, that really have this place in their hearts and their lives for their pets, that they're not alone. And I think so. I wrote the book with that intent. and educate a little bit about some of the things that are really important to me. Some of the blogs that I've posted in years since I started my blog, some of these more personal, emotional, and funny blogs were what I got the most feedback with. Made me think that this is what people want to hear more of or learn more of, and that prompted me to write the book and share those stories to a wider audience. And so I hope that they will learn from it and enjoy it, and that's my intent with the book and with my social media. And another one important thing in my social media and my intent is I want people to get their veterinary advice from professionals. I want to be, they're getting so much misinformation on social media, so I want to be a reliable source of information for them as opposed in a sea of misinformation.
Well, I think that's all the time we have, and you've certainly given us a great deal of information. And good luck with the book, and good luck with your animals and with your patients. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. Yeah, you too. I enjoyed speaking with you.
Thank you.